Hello, BookTube. Well, here we are, tempting fate. Hmm? The last time I did a live stream, a Steve stream, I had to do it ninja style. I couldn't warn you ahead of time. A bunch of people showed up. We started having a great conversation. And then I booted myself out of the live stream by making some sort of Grandpa Simpson mistake with the keyboard and couldn't get back in, could not return to the live stream. And YouTube at first couldn't get me back in. Eventually, I figured out that there is a way for me to just nuke a live stream that is ongoing. I privated this thing so that you couldn't, just log on and watch it going on with me somewhere else in the room. But it was still going on, and I figured out a way to nuke it, to just destroy it. Took a lot of work, but I know that it's possible, which means it's possible now as well if this one goes rogue. so so I thought, just to get back up on the horse, I would try this again. I would try a live stream again. It still has to be a ninja live stream. I still have no idea how to make a warning video and then go live on the location of that video. So I'm still at the mercy of whoever happens to be wandering by the fruit stand. But even so, I figured these videos can still be worthwhile if I have something to talk about, so that even if nobody shows up, I would still have something to talk about. Uh, so that's what I'm going to do. Uh, Sorry, I'm trying to understand what I'm looking at here, but I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to leave it be. Uh, because I do have a subject in mind. It's a small subject in mind. It's a bit of wheedling self-justification. It'll do for a 20-minute video. I'll make note of the fact that I started this at 6:45 Boston time. Uh, and the subject has to do with email. I leave my email on every single video. I'm going to leave it on this live stream when I post it as a video. I leave it on every single video, and it's not a merch store. I don't have one of those. It's not some, second cousin once removed that I got to come into my YouTube studio or whatever. And it's not a junk account. It's my inbox. uh, and I do that because I want to hear from everybody. Because if I'm on BookTube in order to make friends, if I'm on BookTube for the famous community, I don't want some sort of electric fence up between me myself and that community. So I put that email uh, on every video, and I trust you to use common sense and also to take to heart a few uh, simple pieces of advice, a few warnings, if you will. One is, that's the email I want you to use. I am reachable on a whole bunch of other different emails, but that's the one I put on every video. It's my personal email, leads straight to my inbox. If you use an email other than that to email me personal stuff just about this channel, I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to ignore that email, no matter how much work was put into it, no matter how heartfelt it is. If you intentionally are sending it to the wrong place, I'm going to ignore it. And warning number two would be that if you send me an email that's 1,500 words long, just a gigantic, unending block, a screed of prose, well, again, no matter how much work is put into it, I appreciate the attempt to reach out, but my brain is automatically going to look at that and categorize it as work. And that means it's going to slot in with all the rest of the writing work. What it is, my brain is going to see that as writing work. Responding to an email that long would require a long essay. And once my brain thinks of it as writing work, it's going to slot it in to all the day's other writing work. I know I make a lot of videos every day, so I might give the impression that I'm idle all day long, but I'm not. And that's another warning that attends to me giving emails on my videos, is that if you send me a 2,000 word personal essay, don't expect to hear back from me. That's pretty simple, right? And another warning with leaving my email on videos sort of attaches to that as well, which is that my brain is going to see a long email like that and automatically categorize it as work, even though you're categorizing it as a personal interaction because you've written too long an email. Simple as that. But in addition to my brain categorizing long emails as work, sometimes a few people have emailed me with explicit work where they bring up uh, a subject and just say, respond to this. Feel free to go on at great length. And they're not offering to pay. They're not doing anything like that. Some people, a few people, will actually make an email, will send an email that is actually simply work, a request for unpaid work, which is just as obnoxious as if you had a friend who was an accountant and you just offhandedly said, well, you'll do my taxes for free, won't you? It's just as obnoxious as that. I'm on my computer writing all day for a living. I love it. I'm grateful that I love it. But nevertheless, every once in a while, someone will do that. So there are warnings that attach to me leaving my email on every video. Uh, Send to that email. Don't expect a personal response to an email that you fire off somewhere else. Uh, don't overwrite. Please don't overwrite. And don't ask me to do work and expect me to do it. I've had in the years that I've been leaving my email on videos, I've had I think two people actually get huffy, actually get offended when they didn't hear from me for a week and said, "I'm re-upping this idiot of this email. I'm just sending it again to make sure you know that it's in your inbox." At which point, I have to write to them and say, "I saw it the first time. It's an unadorned demand for work. I don't work for you. Even the people that I do work for don't make unadorned demands for work for me. I don't work for you. This is a friendship thing." And if you are the type of person who walks up to a friend and demands that they do something for you, well, anyway, uh, the reason that the fact that I leave my email in every video comes to mind is because I got an email the other day that I wanted to talk about. I thought that would make this live stream. That and addition, I would like to make this work. I would like to make a live stream and then end it of my own volition and have it work. I'm seeing that there are people in the chat. So that is wonderful. I see Hamilton Thompson, Readeropolis, Alan Black, Laverne Hodge, Sakari Happening, and Lou G. So that's great. That's fantastic. So that this is working. That's fantastic. Okay. So I don't have to think of this as just a cut and dried, unresponded video. I made a bunch of those today already. But I do have a subject in mind that I wanted just a wheedling bit of self justification on because I got an email from somebody. I don't think they watch my channel. I don't think I recognize the name at all. Uh, so they might. I think their question, or rather their comment, makes it pretty clear they don't have any idea uh, who I am. Don't have any idea of the flavor of this whole thing because they were responding to a comment I made yesterday. One of the videos that I made yesterday was about March Mystery Madness and how I'm letting the team down. I'm not making regular daily videos about March Mystery Madness, and I said the same thing about Matthew at Mayberry Book Club that we have a public facing book club and I haven't been doing anything for the month. But I was talking about March Mystery Madness, and I mentioned that I have not read any first rate mysteries published in March in the US market so far in March Mystery Madness. And I expanded from that to say that that is of a piece with my reading in 2022 just in general. Now, those of you who've been watching my channel for a long time, those of you who are, those of us who are friends, you will already know that I read a fairly wide variety of types of things. In the new release American book market, I read debut fiction, uh, literary fiction, historical fiction, mystery, romance, science fiction, and fantasy. Uh, uh, I'm leaving lots of things out. Nature, science, history, biography, uh, and works in translation, and probably a couple of other that I'm leaving out. Uh, and I mentioned in that video yesterday that not only have I not read any good, really standout first-rate mysteries in March of 2022, but that I haven't read many first-rate standout books of any kind in 2022. And in the course of mentioning that, in the course of mentioning that's a little disappointing. I mentioned that so far, as of the filming yesterday, I had read well over 200 books, in the neighborhood of 240 books. I didn't think anything of it. I honestly didn't. I didn't think anything of it. Uh, but this person who emailed me, that was bothering them, and they emailed me saying that I shouldn't brag. That was bragging, and I shouldn't brag. And I wrote back and said, you seem new to my channel. I honestly wasn't bragging. I promised that I wasn't bragging. I was just stating it so that you knew the ambit of how much I've read. If I say that March books are not pleasing me, and it turns out I've only read four, well, then that doesn't mean anything. I said it only to put it in context of the reading that I was doing. Uh, but it bothered me. That comment bothered me because I've had that comment before. Not usually from people who know me or who are secure in their own reading, but for other people. And I wanted, yeah, well, okay, Luigi says brag with a smiley face, and that's because it's because I love to be a little bit obnoxious. But when I said that about how many books that I've read so far this year, I was most certainly not bragging. And I wanted to defend that just a little because it's an old accusation. And I guess it still has the power to bother me. Uh, I never get this accusation from people that have been dealing with me for a while that really know me. I'm hoping that that means that they know that I'm not bragging because I have never once in my entire life have I said that quantity of reading is more important than quality of reading. I joke about how if I were reduced to the quantity of reading that a lot of the people that I know read, I would feel like I was being punished. But that's a joke. I joke that way. I know that a lot of the people that I know are enjoying the reading that they're doing, even at the crawling along the ground paralytic pace that they do. Even in the middle of a wheedling justification, I can't resist poking people. Most of you are much slower readers than I am. I have never in a million years would I insinuate that that makes you less passionate, less involved, less real readers. And it seems to me that the only reason that I would be doing that I could be accused of bragging is if that is what I was saying. And it's not. I have never said that. Never. I don't believe that quantity is more important than quality. I just do a lot of quantity. And I've always said, in connection with that, that you would do relatively the same amount of quantity if the factors involved were the same. Under normal circumstances, I sleep much, much less than you do. I don't have a job that I go to anymore for 10 hours a day. I don't have, you know, uh, uh, any family obligations or friend obligations or anything like that. If the best that they can do for a friend is Deb, I, I do very little else, is what I'm saying. I devote a huge amount of time to reading every day. And I always say, if you did the same thing, your numbers would be about the same as mine. I don't sleep as much as you do. I don't subvocalize. Uh, and I devote a huge amount of time every day to this. And that's why the number is the way it is. If you did the same, your number would be the same. It's not a reflection of any kind on quality or worth or integrity or anything like that. And it would seem to me that it would need to be a reflection on that for it to be bragging. It's not bragging. First, I do all of that stuff. And second, uh, I like to think that the whole time that I've been doing all of that reading, I've been putting it at the service of other people. I've been lording it over other people. I'm always ready with recommendations. I'm always ready with giving books to people. I'd like to think that that excuses me too from an accusation that I was bragging. Uh, so I just wanted to, oh good. Oh good Lord. Deb is in the chat. Oh no. No, Deb, I am not bragging. If anyone knows that, it's you or Sam. That when I want to brag, I'm a lot more obnoxious than I am when I talk about reading. I was only mentioning the numbers in order to give context to the fact that I was largely condemning an entire year of publishing. I was largely doing that. You can't do such a thing without a justification. That's what my justification was. I just I just thought that I would bring it up. That's all. Uh, I I faced this a lot, including when Deb and I worked in bookstores. When we worked in the bookstore together, I would get this a lot from people who would hear how much reading I do and think that I was bragging. I'm pretty happy with the fact that even people who've ended up hating me have never actually gone. Most of them have never gone so far as to say that I'm lying about how much reading I do. I think that's sort of a moot point. I pretty much demonstrate that I know what I'm talking that I have read what I'm talking about. So, but the accusation that I'm bragging about it bothers me. An accusation that I'm simply lying about it would be kind of fantastical. I wouldn't really care. But Yes. See, Deb in this one instance is telling the truth. When I am bragging, I am insufferable. And that's why I thought that the person who made this comment, who sent me this email, mustn't watch my channel because I do plenty of insufferable bragging on my channel. I wasn't even thinking about it when I was talking about the number because it's just a number. Your number is just as important to me as mine is. There is no superiority of quantity over quality here. Quantity is what I do. It's the way I organize my reading life. Everybody organizes their reading life differently. That's how I organize my reading life. That's all. Uh, oh, wait a minute though. We do have a chat going on here. Matt Sheridan says, Steve, notice I'm not touching the chat because I don't want to be bounced out of it. And I see a big red button that says end stream. So this looks like it's going to work. So anyway, Matt Sheridan says, Steve, do you see the Batman yet? I did. I did. I enjoyed it, but wow, at times it dragged. Yes, it did. It did very much drag. And of course, this was squarely in the crosshairs of the ongoing culture war that we're all a part of. If you deal with plastic media of any kind, you have to engage with the culture war, or at least you have to know that the culture war is engaging with what you're watching. So, I had to watch for the culture war reactions to this thing. It all just fascinates me. And the culture war reaction to Batman was twofold. One, the infamous Catwoman comment about white privilege, and two, the fact that there are no virtuous white characters in the show except Batman and Alfred. Aside from the heroes of the show, there are all of the other white characters in it are ethically compromised or evil. Uh, but I agree. I agree with you. I enjoyed it, but it dragged. And I have a bashful submission as to why it dragged because it wasn't about a Kryptonian. Although, honestly, why not make it about a Kryptonian if Batman is now completely casually bulletproof? Unless what you shoot him in the mouth. If your suit is so bulletproof that you can take multiple point blank high velocity muzzle shots and it doesn't even move you, doesn't even make you twitch, ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. I had the same problem with Batman v Superman when Ben Affleck's Batman was taking point blank shots to the back of his cowl, to his head, and it wasn't bothering him at all, not even ringing in the ears. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. If you're going to defy physics like that, why not just make the character bulletproof? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm ignoring the chat here. Leo Percara, oh no. Do you think Juno Diaz will ever come back once you deem, uh, or once you're deemed as a witch, you might as well? Oh, I lost the comment. I'm not going to touch it either. Uh, well, okay, I don't see who left the comment, but I do believe that the bragging accusation reflected on the accuser rather than on me. Deb is entirely right. When I am bragging, I don't sound the way I did when I was merely mentioning how many books I've read this year. It's such a stupid thing to brag about. I brag about my looks. Uh, Trish Bovell says 28-year-olds shouldn't care what other people think, maybe when you're older. Well, I can't help it, you know? I am a sexy influencer. Hamilton Thompson says, on the topic of email conversations, how many do you have uh, ongoing? Don't brag. I have many, many, many ongoing. So more than I actually thought that I would, because there's a knack to doing it. There's a knack to getting it right with me. You can't send me a long personal essay. And I also have to be comfortable with the fact that if I am working at the moment that I get your email, I probably won't respond right away. Whereas if I'm trying to avoid work, I will. But given that, I have quite a few, and I can always stand more from all of you, including on Voxer. Voxer is easy. Voxer is so easy. There are times when I am writing up a storm, and when I want to break, I don't want to break to go to the email and start writing again. I want to go to Voxer and talk with people. Uh, anyway, Deb's still in the chat. I thought you'd be sleeping, darling. Steve is more critical of what I do instead of reading than how many books I read. It's true. It's true. Give up the porn. Come back to a godly lifestyle, and maybe I'll give you another shot at all of this. Leo Burkar, I think some people are confusing being confident on your own competence with arrogance. Oh my God, Leo, I've had that so many times. That is absolutely true. I do not lack confidence. Perfectly willing to admit that. That's not the same thing as arrogance at all. Especially since most of the things that I don't lack competence in, I'm also willing to put at other people's disposal. Maybe because it is difficult to encounter competent people on YouTube and easy to find arrogant ones. Yes, indeed. Very easy. Oh my God. The kids who have a good genetic package from their parents, so they're fairly good looking. They do a little bit of weightlifting, so they get a nice vascular pump, and they're all of a sudden doing the prayer hands and giving philosophy advice. Omnipotent Poobah says, not sure about emo goth Batman. He came across as wanting to cuddle more than justice and vengeance. I agree completely. I agree completely. The main problem that I had, I brought up the culture wars because I keep an eye on the culture wars. I keep an eye on that, which is why I've got 150 emails in the last 10 hours about Stacey Abrams appearing on Star Trek. Uh, I keep an eye on that culture war stuff, but the main reaction I had personally to Batman is that this is a boy. I was giggling the whole time. He's completely laughable as Batman. That you would cast a boy instead of a man. Emo Batman is great. That's a great way to put it. Matt Sheridan said the scene in which Batman survives a bomb blast to the face was beyond. I agree. I agree. They make him indestructible. That removes a key element of Batman. That removes a key element of what makes the character interesting is that he's not indestructible. He's risking everything every time he goes out to fight crime, which, technically speaking, Superman is not. And that was just gone completely. I argue that was gone in Batman v Superman as early as that. That was what, 10 years ago? 5 years ago? That was a long time ago in pop culture terms. And Batman was taking point blank, repeated shots to the head and shrugging them off as nothing. Anyway, Lou G says, clearly I hit a nerve with this person. Well, maybe I did, but I wish I didn't. Believe it or not, no matter how obnoxious I am sometimes in my videos, I don't actually want to irritate people. And it seemed like I did. I sent a placating email in response saying basically what I've said in this ninja stream, which is that your numbers would start to look like mine if your external factors started to look like mine, but they don't. They don't. That's not my fault. Not all of it is my fault. By 8:30, all of you are looking longingly at your beds. At 8:30, I have 10 more hours in my day. And I use that time reading. As I've been telling you for years, I've been saying for years, and long before this booktube, I would tell people for years at midnight, I turn everything off and just start reading. That's regardless of what I've read all day. That if that were true for you, your numbers would change as well. Uh, let's see here. JPD Manchester, been the same since he was 27, and you would have thought he'd grown up a bit now he's 28. Well, I'm a slow learner, as most incredibly gorgeous people tend to be. Uh, Hamilton Thompson says, and you've definitely had people ask during Q&As your annual reading numbers, so there. Right, which leads me to think that the person who sent me that email is new to my channel. I get that a lot. I got a fugitive comment. I was mentioning this to Olive the other day. I was saying, is it me, or if I get a comment on a video that's more than a year or two old, it's always going to be obnoxious. It's always going to be somebody just swooping in to throw a bomb and then leaving. And that happened again. Someone found my Daily Penguin for Moby Dick just yesterday, or maybe 10 hours ago. Somebody found that video and said, "Stop waving the book around and read it, man." Yeah, because you could definitely tell from that video that I've never read this Moby Dick thing. Anyway, uh, Matt Sheridan says it was such a glaring error to me to have Bruce Wayne as a moping emo kid. Like, have we forsaken all of alter egos? Well, think about what the alternatives would have been, right? Again, in the context of the culture war, think what the alternative would have been. If he wasn't a moping emo kid, the alternative would have been that he was a totally competent and self-confident, rich white man. It's amazing to me that a Batman movie got made at all, because that is what Bruce Wayne is. If you're going to do it, you have to make him the most damaged person in the movie. You just have to. That it won't work any other way anymore until the culture wars end one way or another. Uh, Monet Doyle says they didn't pick the right person to play Batman. I agree. They should have picked a grown man. Uh, Leo Percarla says, I was asking about Juno Diaz way. Oh, great. I missed your question because I'm not going to touch the comments. I don't want to be thrown out of my own live stream again. If you think he will ever be able to publish again, I doubt it very much. Doubt we'll ever see another book. Hamilton Thompson says, I watched Iron Man from 2008 the other night, a perfect origin story with a great realistic cast. Yes, and it will never happen again. Look at what Robert Downey Jr. is like in that movie. You can't have a main character in a superhero movie who's like that anymore. A totally confident, blaringly heterosexual, rich white man. No way. No way. It'll never happen. Fans would flock to it, but it would be pilloried in the culture war minuscule little pig pen of Twitter. And that appears to be all that Hollywood cares about. They don't care. It doesn't seem to care about anything other than not being called names on Twitter. I don't get it. Boy, what a performance. I was thinking about that the other day. Just in general, Robert Downey Jr.'s whole performance as Iron Man, especially in the last two Avengers movies, what an amazing uh, performance as a character. Just taking you into that character, just revolutionized the whole thing. But what are we getting for Iron Man content going forward in the new Twitter era of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Ironheart. We're getting Ironheart. We're getting the wearer of the costume as a young, massive Afro black woman who doesn't have any financial ability, doesn't have any technical ability, didn't build the suit herself, and is never going to be knocked around, damaged, has no internal conflicts to deal with. It's going to be Michael Burnham from Star Trek Discovery, only in armor, where everyone loves her, and the people who don't love her are. It's easy to pick them out because they will be the villains. They'll be the villain of the episode. Very, very boring. Very, very boring. Just like uh, that great cameo appearance by Stacey Abrams in Star Trek Discovery. That's all anybody's emailing me about. That great cameo appearance. She's the leader of the United Earth. She's come to bring Earth back into the Federation. She's talking to the head of the Federation and saying, "There's no need to discuss this. Our answer is yes. We want to rejoin." Okay, great. Starship Captain Michael Burnham is in the crowd. One starship captain among many, certainly not the head of the Earth government. But what happens with Stacey Abrams' character? She immediately says, "Captain, can I have a word alone?" and walks off to talk to Captain Jesus Christ about how much work she still has to do in saving the whole of the unwoke galaxy. And then they walk back, I guess, because now it's time for you to talk to the head of the Earth's government instead of the captain of one starship. Perfect example of what Ironheart will be and everything else that's going to be. But anyway, I'm sorry. Uh, okay, Sakari Happonen is laughing, but I don't know why. Fadista says new hero Soy Boy. Well, it just won't be men anymore, unless studios wise up. Unless studios realize we can either kowtow to these elements and have our products get pilloried in the press, or uh, we can make what fans want and make $1 billion. So you can either make a stupid, uh, pandering, new age politic type of movie that virtue signals but doesn't do anything dramatic, or you can make Spider-Man No Way Home. Uh, it's up to you. I'd like to think that a lot uh, of movie studios will make the decision to make $1 billion. I'd like to think so. Uh, but I'm missing comments here because I'm not going to touch the comments. So if you've made a comment and I missed it, make it again. Uh, uh, let's see here. Lou says, oh no, I missed that. Isaiah Armstrong, currently reading Cross Examined because of your recommendation. I'm really enjoying it right now. For some reason, reading it on ebook is way more welcoming than the heavier hardcover. Yeah, I don't have an ebook of it. Or I would definitely have preferred it. Sean D says, Hollywood must be full of frustrated writers with great stories to tell. Oh, I know some of them. I have a friend who works in Hollywood and has for a long time, and the stories that she tells would stand thy several hairs on end like quills upon the fretful porpentine. She has horror stories to tell about what has taken over the woke ideology that has taken over Hollywood. Horror stories to tell, and horror stories to tell about what's coming. The only way to make it to reject it is to just make sure that it doesn't make money. And I don't know that the will is out there. Uh, Matt Sheridan says one subject on the subject of cinema. I'm not the biggest Chris Nolan fan, but I'm intrigued by his Oppenheimer film coming out. Well, I hate Chris Nolan. I can't stand auteur directors, and he clearly wants to be one. I don't have any uh, great faith in his Oppenheimer movie. Now, this is a great subject, but I don't have any great faith in it. Uh, Sakari Happening says my stream had latency. I was laughing at the Moby Dick thing. Well, it is kind of funny. If you go back to that video, the Daily Penguin on Moby Dick, you can see the comments. I'm not going to remove them, but I've decided that I'm also not going to respond. If somebody leaves a video on a comment on leaves a comment on a video of mine that's years old, I'm not. My YouTube tells me that it happened, but I'm not going to respond to some jabroni who shows up on a Moby Dick video of mine and says you clearly haven't read the book. I mean, really. Uh, let's see here. Omnipotent Poobah says, "I see your favorite American writers publishing two new novels." Yes, I got a lot of emails about that too. In the last 10 hours, all the emails have been about Stacey Abrams, but I got a lot of emails about Cormac McCarthy's announcement about his two new novels. Uh, Brian says the woke movies still seem to rake it in anyway. I don't agree. I don't agree. There are occasional exceptions, but they're usually springboarded by something that has nothing to do with the woke ideology. I tend to think that when they stand on their own, they tend to fail. Like, for instance, Star Trek Discovery, which has been on a hothouse protected little reservation in terms of hidden ratings. But when it was briefly floated on network, on actual viewer rated TV, it tanked massively. Nobody wanted to watch it. It is awful, off putting. Uh, anyway, I'm not going to touch the sea here. Uh, Trip says, "Don't you think the superhero movie thing is over and done with at this point? Seems like every other movie is Marvel or something." I do think it's played out, yeah, and I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the end of the last stage, the great two-part Thanos movies, largely helped with with the rest of it feeling like an addendum because what else is there to do? No Iron Man, no Thor, no Captain America. The substitutes don't interest anyone. So no Hulk, as far as we know. Doctor Strange and Spider Man can't carry the whole thing on their own, and Marvel doesn't seem to be. When I saw that Marvel was going to do that for Avengers Endgame, I thought, okay, well, you're going to do that because you know that you have the Fantastic Four and the X Men. You know that you have major franchises that you can move to. They don't appear to be doing that. So instead, you're going to expect people to be interested in Star Fox or the Black Knight. uh, let's see here. Isaiah Armstrong says, "Will there ever be a Hollywood tell-all book in the future?" Hollywood studios take a huge amount of precautions against that. A huge amount. You won't get a job in the industry. So what you need is someone with a perfect storm of items in the right columns. You need someone with a great lawyer because that lawyer has got to not only break the NDA but also defend them against breaking the NDA. And you also need someone who not only has a great lawyer but also has a pile of FU money and is already leaving the industry. And that never happens. That just never happens. Uh, uh, yeah, Fadista says that woke movies bomb, and I tend to think that's true. Let's not let Captain Marvel carry too much weight here. I think if all else being equal, so a movie not having an incredibly important springboard scene in the post credits that everybody's going to go to see, I anyway. Monet Doyle says a Hollywood tell-all book of Hollywood's deep dark secrets would be amazing. I agree, it would. I know some of those secrets, and some of them are unbelievably amazing. Matt Sheridan says, "Do you think Howard Bloom ever read Blood Meridian?" No, no. Fadista says there is some guy called Young Ripa who is creating a new independent comics franchise. Not sure of the name. Right. Well, Young Ripa is Comicsgate adjacent, and they all have their own Indiegogo style imprints, and some of them are independently wealthy because of it. There's definitely an audience there and money there. The one thing I haven't noticed is a whole lot of quality, except for Ethan Van Sciver's artwork, which is astonishingly beautiful. But it's a cyborg frog. It's a recycled idea, literally from the 1990s. So I'm not interested in that, and I don't know what he could do that I would be interested in. Uh, uh, Hamilton Thompson says, "Isn't Jerry Ryan the president of Earth on Picard?" Well, in a Q-inspired alternate universe, she is. The president of Earth in the current year Star Trek iteration is Stacey Abrams, and it was great to see. It was absolutely. She's a lifelong Star Trek nerd, and it was great to see. Uh, Matt Sheridan says, "Mr. Putler Gollum, I agree." What did Mr. Putler Gollum say? Did he say something? I missed his comment. And The Dark Knight is still a great film. Okay, well, if he said The Dark Knight was a great film, he's wrong, and so are you. It stinks. Uh, Lydia Joy says, "Just listen to a really fun TCM podcast about the making of the Bonfire of the Vanities movie. I will need to reread The Devil's Candy." CDN Chaos with a Z says, "Do you think the woke movement is just swinging of the pendulum? Will it just settle into something less radical and or less annoying?" Well, you already know what I think. It would be a major thing to think about if American history weren't going to interrupt it. and American history is going to interrupt it in just 2 years. So it's the last thing in the world. We'll all be looking back at the woke movement uh, and wishing that we could have it back to yell about. Uh, my Deb says, unlike you and I with our FU Barnes and Noble money, yeah, we were lucky that we got a little cheap brass pin. Uh, Jack O'Hara says, I bet you're so excited about the new Cormac McCarthy books. I am excited for them, of course, but it really bothers me uh, that the the dude bros already have their responses in place. They don't actually need to read the books. I want to tell them. So I do. I am interested in reading the books. You fundamentally are not. You already know what you think about these things and what you're going to say about them. To anybody who has any criticism of them, you already know what you're going to say word for word, which means, doesn't it, that you care less about these books than I do. So they'll be swamping my own profession. Uh, Monet Doyle says, do you think that Biden should take responsibility for the economy and the rise in gas prices? He isn't responsible. The president famously is not responsible for that sort of thing. What's he going to do? Open up drilling in Alaska? No, we already know the factors that are involved, and he has only a limited uh, hand to play against that. I would say the same thing about any president, even presidents that I don't like. President has very little to do with the state of the economy. He's doing everything he can, but there's a war on. Let's see here. So Tears Itzos says, is Joseph McElroy worth reading at this point? And have you read the excerpt of his new historical novel set in ancient Greece, the time of the Peloponnesian War? I haven't read the excerpt, but he is worth reading. Yeah. Mr. Putler Gollum says, will comics die because of woke culture or movies still find them? I think comics are largely. Have you read a recent superhero comic book? You would be amazed. If you haven't done it, you would be amazed. Amazed. I have all sorts of ideological issues with Comicsgate, the phenomenon of Comicsgate on YouTube. But when they say that current DC and Marvel comics are largely technically just industry-wise bad, they're absolutely right. The things are virtually unreadable. Even if you leave out the woke politics, they're horribly drawn, most of them. You get barely any of a comic book. You get maybe 6 full color pages, and then the rest of it is filler. I think if they weren't being floated by movie money, I think they'd be in serious danger. It looks like DC is in serious danger anyway. But the numbers are awful. They're unsustainable. Uh, did we get the first jabroni on this channel? I don't know. Is it? Can we get a WWE style promo about Dude Bro Lit? Perhaps no. I haven't antagonized the Dude Bro readers in quite some time. Brian says, what's going to happen in 2 years? Okay, there's an election in America in 2 years. Oh, Mr. Butler Gollum said Memento is a great film. You are correct. You are wrong. It is not. It stinks. Take away the gimmick and show me what's left. Okay? Now do the same thing for instance, another Dude Bro favorite, Blade Runner. Take the gimmicks out of Blade Runner, you have a great movie. Take the gimmick out of Memento and you don't have anything. There's nothing there at all. It's just a bunch of people somnambulating through a boring piece of exposition. So you're wrong. Dead wrong. Okay? So, oh, was that me being arrogant? Dr. Bacon said, I've seen several of that type of dude bro already repost the Cormac McCarthy announcement saying things like these will be amazing or they will blow everything else this year out of the water. It's not so much they're okay. I'm okay with them being enthusiastic. It's the follow-up that I hate, which is the completely complacent way in which they will dismiss any criticism. They're already they've already sealed the aft compartments. It's their entire world of the reaction to these 2 books is already sealed and done. It has nothing to do with the books. The books themselves won't change a single bit of it, whereas they will for me. So how is it that I could be more of a genuine Cormac McCarthy fan than they are? Uh, Matt Sheridan says, "Oh, the Dark Knight stinks. Them's a fighting words, partner." Well, I'm afraid they are. Yes, you're just wrong. That's all. You're just wrong. It's a terrible movie. Uh, Hamilton Thompson says, not to get political because this is a happy stream, but does Putin/Ukraine help or hurt who shall not be president? Well, Trump made it pretty clear in his latest Klan rally that he does not intend to run for president. It won't be president that he will become in 2024. He has a different job in mind than that. You're not running for president if you're priming your followers to die when you tell them to. Of course, the war in Ukraine will somehow be used as a cudgel to beat Joe Biden in both the midterms and the run up to the general election. Or not Joe Biden, since I think I'm the last person on earth who actually believes Joe Biden when he says he has no intention of running for a second term. It'll be used to beat the Democratic frontrunner no matter what. And that's absurd because Republican news outlets, if you want to call them that, were repeating unaltered Russian talking points forever until they realized that the country was in favor of Zelensky and Ukraine. Then all of a sudden they started backtracking. Well, of course, this Putin guy is evil. But that infamous Tucker Carlson broadcast where he was running down the list of anti-woke things that Putin has never done. He's never eaten dogs, anything like that. That should hang around his neck like a millstone forever. The Republicans cannot say, they cannot use this as a cudgel against the Democratic frontrunner. It's not going to matter, though. Anyway, Isaiah Armstrong says, would it be possible for me to read City of God without being fully acquainted with the Bible and Roman literature? Possible, but not advisable. It's a tough book to recommend. I love it, but it's a tough book to recommend to people. Fedista says, could a fantasy franchise ever be made from The Fairy Queen by Edmund Spencer? Yes, it could be. Rena is Reading says, Nolan's whole career is the same gimmick over and over. Rena is Reading is being, if anything, generous. But we've already made Matt Sheridan. We've already got his fighting blood up. We don't want to make him any angrier. Matt Sheridan returns. Are hoping to do an episode about Ami 1649 about 9/11 conspiracy theories. Your JFK one was wonderful. Well, Ami has to be willing to do that. And I guess I'm not cool enough. I guess I'm not Brandon's bookshelf. So I'm not cool enough for him to do a conversation with me. He has to be willing. It takes two to make a video in which I do all the talking. CDN Chaos with a Z says, I like Inception. It's not deep, but I found it entertaining. As long as we agree that it's not deep. But you have spoken heresy to every dude bro in the world when you say that it's not deep. They think it's the deepest thing in the world. Flora Should Be Reading says, got here a bit late, but speaking of comics, I started reading Watchmen and I'm impressed by the complexity of the narrative. What do you think about the 2009 movie and the recent HBO series? The 2009 movie is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. The HBO series is unrecognizable and garbage. Absolute garbage. Woke, now since we're talking about Hollywood being in love with woke stuff, it's the SJW woke comic book creators who constantly live on Twitter and say comics have always been political are dead wrong. Yes, there have always been politics in comics. American Stan Lee era comics have always had politics in them, but comics have never been partisan. It's never been, here's a figure of a president, a politician, a social issue, and here's the right side of it to be on versus the wrong side. That's the problem that I have with Stacey Abrams being in Star Trek as president of United Earth. She wasn't there. The showrunners did not put her in there because she is a champion of democracy and a great community activator. They put her in there to infuriate an imagined crowd of racist enemies of theirs. They put it in there for Twitter points. They gave her a guest starring appearance on Star Trek Discovery for Twitter points. And the same thing was true with the HBO Watchmen series. Good Lord, I don't even know what I was looking at. In the HBO Watchmen series was clearly looking at the audience and saying, some of you are the bad guys. And then some of you are the good guys. And we're telling a story about that confrontation. Ridiculous. And nothing like what Watchmen was doing. Let's see here. Psychedelic B says, can't stick around, but glad to see you streaming again. Well, me too. I'm keeping my eye on the big red end stream button, which has not gone anywhere. And I'm also not touching the comments. I'm restricted by so many restrictions that other live streamers don't have. But it is so far working. Matt Sheridan says, do you really think Biden will not run again? He said that he wouldn't. He said he's a caretaker president. I agree. It doesn't look likely, since I would think by this point, all we would ever be seeing at any event, in any news program of any kind, would be Kamala Harris over and over again. If Biden and the Democratic Party were positioning her to run in 2024, I would think that would be all we were seeing. And we're most certainly not seeing that. So I don't know, but I trust that he won't run again. Yeah, so he'd be 95. That's ridiculous. Hamilton Thompson says, I did like Dunkirk. That is a Nolan film, just saying. All right, okay, fine. Well, I like Dunkirk too, but come on. It's pretty easy as a movie to make, right? You give me a $400 million budget, I could probably make an effective movie of that story. Uh, what I'm saying is it wasn't Nolan doing any Nolan stuff. Okay, so as far as I know, he was in his trailer the whole time, and his assistant director was doing. Uh, Brian says Commando scene in Inception was great though. No, no, you're dead wrong. You're dead wrong. Sotiris Itzo says, what should be done about the dude bro-ness of modern literature? There is no antidote of this kind of work. Should we turn to classics, or even, dare I say it, to their agenda pushing contemporaries? Well, it's not just dude bro lit that makes contemporary literary fiction uh, unpalatable. It's also all of the authorial egotism behind autofiction that makes it awful too. It's just a wasteland. I really have nothing but admiration for friends of mine who are in the reviewing world, only reviewing contemporary fiction. I would burn out in 2 seconds. Uh, Isaiah Armstrong says, any starter kit videos in the works? Well, I said that last time, didn't I? I should do that. Dr. Bacon says SJW culture is interesting to me. I find most of it tolerable for a few years, but I've noticed that lately it just can't seem to stomach most of it. I've decided to leave academia because it's rampant. Well, it's everywhere in academia. Yeah, and you don't in academia you don't get the option of just quietly abstaining. You are told that you have to full throatedly North Korea style parrot it back out loud, and you're judged at how loud you do it, with how much enthusiasm you do it. It's pure North Korea. Even for me, even watching it as a consumer in TV shows and movies, it gets old immediately because it's targeted at me. It's targeted. I can see that it's targeted at people saying you're bad. Just acknowledge that you're bad, and we'll let you have your hobby again. I don't want to. I don't want to pass some sort of purity test to watch a show like Star Trek that I was watching when its current showrunners hadn't been born yet. Uh, Jack O'Hara said those beach scenes in Dunkirk. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Uh, Leave says favorite currently working director. Directors don't matter. Brian says, but no, you're wrong, and I'm right. And if you're wondering whether or not I'm right about whether or not I'm right, simply ask yourself, which of the two of us has more subscribers? Fidista says, what did you think of Tenet? I am not a Nolan fan, but thought it was pretty good. No, you're dead wrong. Okay, I don't. Okay, so is this a Steve stream or is this a Nolan stream? How is it that this Nolan guy has suddenly taken over the chat? What's wrong with you people? Eyes on the prize. Let's look at another comment and hope that people have got their sense of priorities back. Nick Piccarilli says, just tuning in. Are we saying Nolan is overrated? Because I'm here for it. Thank you, UK. Hamilton Thomas says the only thing Dunkirk didn't have was an outrageous mustache on Kenneth Branagh. Yes, well, also it also did another enormous feat was to get a few of its young 20-something stars not to smoke. They wanted to smoke endlessly. In fact, a couple of them approached the casting director specifically because they thought, well, this is a period piece, so that means I get to smoke all through the movie, right? Just like uh, Nick Jonas did in that wretched what was it, Midway, where he played a heroic gunner, deck gunner. That was exactly the conversation that his agent had with the casting director for that movie. He'll be in it if he can smoke all the way through it, because he's not interested in any kind of a show in which he can't do that. But I'm missing comments because I'm not going to touch the comments. The next button that I hit is going to be end stream, so I'm not going to touch the comments. So if you make a comment and I miss it, it's just that I'm incredibly popular. Matt Sheridan. Oh my God, Matt Sheridan is still talking about Chris Nolan. If you love him so much, why don't you marry him? Let's see what you have to say this time about his erection. Chris Nolan has a hearing problem because his sound mixing is just atrocious. He has a directing problem as well. Okay, bub. A bottle in books. Can you do a Nolan starter kit? All right, that's enough. That's enough. I will turn this chat right around. Mayberry Book Club. Oh no. What does Deb think of Christopher Nolan movies? Okay. Now we've reached the inception point of the chat. Isaiah Armstrong, SJW politics in university is like the statement of faith at religious colleges. You cannot go against orthodoxy. That sounds overblown, but it's actually absolutely true. Um, Joseph Cosley, you cannot say in most colleges, you cannot say that a woman is pregnant. You can't imply that only women get pregnant. uh, and so on and so forth. And to say nothing of the, for instance, the racist Rutgers professor who said in a podcast that is widely available online that all white people should be wiped out. She still has her job. She's never been even verbally reprimanded for that. It's genocidally racist. She's never been bothered with it at all. And you can bet if she said that on a podcast, she teaches it in class. People take notes on it. And anyway, Steve's videos are better directed than Nolan films. uh, let's see here. I'm missing a lot of the chat here. A bad director is like a bad editor. If you're talking about the directing and editing after the film, it's bad. Matt Sheridan says, this weekend I started reading Every Drop of Blood by Edward Acorn. It's about Lincoln's second inauguration, and it's really fascinating. Deb is here. You don't know what Nolan's directed. Yeah. That's Deb, right on the cutting edge of culture, as always. She probably wonders what the latest Hitchcock is. Trish Boval says, I've been watching the Winds of War and War and Remembrance miniseries. Are the books worth it? The books are much better than the miniseries. As is true with, I'm gonna offend the dude bros here. Get ready for incoming from Matt Sheridan. As is true with anything with Robert Mitchum in it. But the books are incredibly good. Incredibly good. Better, I think, than anything that Herman Wouk wrote, even the Caine Mutiny. Just incredibly worth your time. Uh, Jack O'Hara says, what does Frida think about Deb's opinions of Christopher Nolan? Can we move on to John Ford now? If we only could move on to John Ford, that would be great. Hamilton Thompson says, let's talk about anticipation levels of Strange New Worlds. That's Nolan free. It's Nolan free, but it's still going to be incredibly woke. I wish it weren't. I wish that from the teaser trailer, I'm clearly meant to believe from the teaser trailer that Paramount is not making this woke, that this is going to be a Star Trek show for fans who don't want Captain Jesus in Star Trek Discovery, that don't want characters who are an entire starship where there are no straight people, an entire starship where there are no straight white men who are not stupid or villainous or both. I would like to think from the teaser trailer that Paramount is saying, okay, well, we've heard loud and clear. We think we could make a ton more money with these things than we're making. So let's make a show for those fans. They might hold their noses. They might say, oh, well, sometimes you just have to appease the trolls. Those aren't trolls. I'm one of them. Those are passionate Star Trek fans. They aren't trolls. They just don't like having current year immediate politics rammed down their throat with bad storytelling. It looks from the teaser trailer like that is what they're doing. They're giving us a retro Star Trek. They're giving us the Enterprise again, and they're giving us a straight white male lead, who's also a great guy. But I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a minute. Not for a minute. I don't believe it any more than I believe that Kenobi with Ewan McGregor will be that way. Once this rot takes place, you need to get rid of the people involved. If the same people are doing it, that's what you're going to get, and that's what's going to happen. But I'm missing a lot of the chat here. Nara Roberts is releasing a new book, Night Work. Have you read it? I have not. Dr. Bacon says, I left Rutgers, as a matter of fact, because of those SJW views. The young students in the gender studies program were activists, not scientists. Pure ideology, evidence be damned. Yeah, pure ideology, evidence be damned. If you are in a college class and you say to a colleague on the staff or to a student says to a student, we've got a new pregnancy in the family, and the other person, without any irony and without missing a beat, says, what's the gender of the person who's pregnant? And they just stare at you because they're going to get you drummed out of the institution if you say the wrong word. Then you're in North Korea, and you should get out as fast as possible. And that is true. That happens now all the time. That happens now. People who menstruate. I'm sure a lot of you saw that story about the kid who was 230 something nationally ranked as a swimmer and just won first place because he's not a he anymore. Because he transitioned to a woman. And the right wing, the fascist right wing, is making hay out of that. They'll make hay out of that forever. The pictures alone are damning of him. Anyway, Matt Sheridan is back. Oh my. Speaking of Ford, the man who shot Liberty Valance is amazing. Now, see, was that hard? Was that so hard? All you had to do was let go. Just let go of Christopher. Look at me, Ma Nolan. Just let go of that. When you're watching The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, you are seeing what actual directing and acting and pacing and set design is like. All I want you to do is apply that standard to every movie that you watch. Now, if your first reaction when I say that is, oh, come on, it wouldn't be fair to apply the standards of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance to every movie that I watch, then who's being the condescending one here? You or me? Of course it's fair. Of course it's fair to do that. Maybe not an action thriller or a popcorn thriller, but if a movie calls itself serious, and believe you me, Christopher Nolan hasn't had a bowel movement that he hasn't called incredibly serious with a capital S. If it calls itself serious, then by all means apply that standard. And what movie in Hollywood almost across the board comes anywhere close? They don't come in. There's virtually even no comparison. That's all I'm asking that you do is use that standard. Then I don't come across as quite so arrogant. But anyway, Matt Sheridan says anything with Lee Marvin, I'm in. You had to go that route. You and I are clearly going to go round and round here. This isn't John Wayne. You're going to talk about the bad guy. Tomorrow's classic. I still like Star Trek Voyager. Janeway was smart without everyone else being dumb. Thank you. Yes, she was smart without everyone else being dumb. And the fact that she was a woman did not mean she was great at everything. She made mistakes. She could be outfought. She wasn't Jesus. Anyway, uh, uh, let's see here. CDN Chaos with a Z says it depends on how flawed they make Pike. I suspect he will be very flawed indeed. Well, it's clear from the teaser trailer that we're going to see him at a broken point in his career, and that this will be the renovation of him. And I have no problem with that as a narrative device at all. When we're seeing him, it appears to be at a kitchen table with a full beard. Could be that he is at a low point and has retreated to his horse ranch for that reason, and that Starfleet needs him back because he's a great captain, I would hope. That is a great gimmick. That is a tried and true science fiction TV show gimmick. If that works, as an opening gimmick on a Star Trek series, it's a lot better than having the main character nerve pincher captain. Anyway, let's see here. Joseph Kozlowski says Michael Bay has the best pacing in Hollywood. I would tend to agree. Wouldn't get much love in the chat, but I would tend to agree. Isaiah Armstrong says my American literature class is based on bashing America. Basically, Whitman was a great poet, but boy was he racist. Yeah, yeah, that's all you'll get. That's all you'll get. Matt Sheridan, Steve, I'm not a big Nolan fan, but The Dark Knight is a masterpiece. No, it's not. No, no. The only reason you're saying that The Dark Knight is a masterpiece is because I'm assuming you're high off your ass on peyote. Once you come down, you will be ashamed of what you have said because it conflicts with what I say. But John Ford is always better. Anthony Mann is great too. Oh, Deb is back. Plus, Janeway fell down every time the ship lurched. Okay. Dr. Bacon says one conversation was an argument that Dune cannot be enjoyed because Herbert was a Republican or wrote for them. They were asking what they should do. Are they allowed to enjoy Dune? Horrifying. Yes, I hear reports of this from all sorts of teachers, all levels of academia. My emails, I get emails plenty of times about this and how horrible it is. Always annoys me when SJW proponents say it isn't happening. That always annoys me. The people who could easily flood your inbox with all sorts of testimony that it's happening, including video clips that I've seen, clandestine video clips from phones. They're not going to substantiate that to you if they think you're going to join a mob to get them deplatformed and unemployed. And that's the reason that inside your bubble you can think that isn't real. It is real. Let's see here. Hamilton Thompson says, Steve, there's a shelf there at the cottage for film criticism, etc. No, there isn't hardly any. Bottle Imp Books, the best movie critic that I know, doesn't review movies at the moment, doesn't review TV. He's the best movie and TV, he's the best movie and TV critic that I've ever worked with, that I've ever read. He doesn't do it anymore. So that's the story of my life. I know 2 or 3 great fiction critics who don't write. They don't do fiction criticism. And annoyingly enough, the best movie critic that I've ever read doesn't review movies anymore. So now I don't have any movie criticism here. So Tears Itsu says, no, Bottle and Book says, when Steve biopic gets made, who will play you? Pumped up Taylor Lautner? Maybe? Oh, he's really old now. What am I thinking? So Tears Itsu says, I love these flash reviews of books, movies. What's your opinion on the movie The Lion in Winter? Very funny. I love it, as you know, perfectly well, since I talk about it endlessly on my channel. Monet Doyle says, what will you do upon reaching 13K subscribers? Well, that's never going to happen, so I'm not going to need to worry about Snark Hunter says critics were dismissive of Angela Du Maurier's no, of I haven't been able to track any down. Do you know whether this was measuring her against her sister's work, or she's not a great read? I don't think I've ever read an Angela Du Maurier. Uh, Isaiah Armstrong says, "What would be the tell-all book that you would write and have published after you die?" Well, I'm only 28, so it's a long way off. It'd be about the book world. Absolutely, it'd be about the book world. Alan Black says, "Was Herbert writing in the 60s and 70s and 80s on very different from modern Republicans?" It shouldn't matter anyway, but I agree. Tomorrow's Classic says Paul Giamatti is Steve Johnny now. I'm afraid not. No, I'm not a tobacco addict, and I don't think he can do any roles now that aren't. At least you're not saying that I'm what's his name? Uh, oh my God, his name's gone right out of my head. Uh, the guy who played Agamemnon. He's in a hit show now about the Trump family. Succession, I think, is what it's called. I've had a couple of people say that he reminds them of me. That's not good. Sakari Happening says, "Well, isn't that also a sort of same reason why John Dos Passos isn't much reprinted outside of a few novels in Library of America and one edition in Vintage? His personal politics at the time. I don't know. I It could very well be. It's a shame. A lot of Americans don't know his work at all, and it's great." Um, Jack O'Hara says, "Is My Darling Clementine any good, Steve? Worth a watch, or should I watch Tombstone for the 12th time instead?" You're watching Tombstone that often. The next time you feel like watching Tombstone two or three, four or five times, you could watch Deadwood. Just binge straight through Deadwood. It'll be really good for you. It's utterly fantastic. Uh, Madison Cawthorn reminds me of Doctor Strangelove. Wow. No, no, he's a lot more damage. Oh, Brian Cox. That's right. It's Brian Cox. A lot of people, some people have made that comparison, and I don't like it at all because I hate that show. Uh, let's see here. Bottle Imp Book says, "I think Beckett is for me is what Lion in Winter is for you. Peter O'Toole was something else." I agree. Uh, in both movies, he is at his best. He is always at his best when he is matching his acting metal against someone else who's also great. And the reason, no matter who it is, whether it's Omar Sharif or Katharine Hepburn or Richard Burton, he's always at his best when that is true. When it's not true, I just am not as big a fan of when it's not true. Uh, let's see here. Isaiah Armstrong, when is the Proust read along again? I keep misunderstanding the month you planned it. Well, I don't see why you would misunderstand unless you're just not paying attention. It's Proust May. Isn't that obvious? Hasn't that been what it's been all along? Joel Law 13 says, Steve, watching your live stream, I can't speed you up to 1.5 speed like usual. I'm not used to this pace. You're the best. Love your channel so much." Well, you can't love my channel all that much if you watch it at cartoonish speed. You should be savoring it at normal speed. Reading this live says, "I just popped into the live. Am I too late?" No, but I do have to end it. If only to prove that I can, that I can end it instead of letting it go on forever. But it has worked so far. Uh, let's see here. Matt Sheridan, what are your thoughts on Eastwood's Unforgiven? It's terrific. It's a tough watch. It's meant to be, but it's terrific. Just terrific. What a movie. What a goodbye to westerns. Just in general, what a goodbye to westerns it is. Boy, oh boy. Uh, let's see here. 99 Goosebumps says, "What are your favorite film adaptations of Robin Hood and King Arthur legends?" There hasn't been any of either one. I keep waiting for one that I will really like, but I haven't seen one. Jack O'Hara says, "I binged Deadwood a few years ago when I first heard you lovingly mention it. What a show." I agree. What a show. Well worth binging again. Well worth it. Uh, let's see here. Monet Doyle says the movie Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood was amazing. I agree. Uh, Brian Marcus says, "Are there more Trollop read-alongs in the future?" Well, I don't seem to be doing well with read-alongs just in general, right? I keep thinking about them and then not doing them, and I don't know why. They're a great deal of fun, but I haven't. Aside from when I do read-alongs with other booktubers, I haven't seemed to be willing to do it on my own. Uh, let's see here. Brian Dr. Bacon says, "Speaking of Brian Cox, Troy is a great movie." I agree. I wouldn't say great, but it's a lot better than critics say it is, which doesn't seem to be the common opinion, but I like it a lot. Eric Bana was a good Hector. Wish he did more work. We part ways immediately. You people are having such trouble staying on track of courting Steve opinions. Eric Bana is awful in everything he does. He was pretty much awful in Troy, except he was given exactly the right things to do. But the rest of the movie, most of the rest of the movie, Troy made Bana bearable, and it made Brad Pitt bearable. That's pretty amazing. For me, that's pretty amazing. I will consider that a win. No, reading this life mentions Excalibur, and I knew you were going to, but no, no, it's a horrible, dorky movie. No, no. Thunder Turtle says, "Glad you figured out the live stream." Well, to the limited extent that I have, it's working, and I'm not touching the comments at all. I'm not moving the cursor around at all. The next button I hit will be to end the stream, and that appears to be working. I just wish that live streams worked for me without all of these weird restrictions, the way they do for everybody else. I watched a live stream just this morning, and the two hosts between them have about Frida's IQ. Not to brag or anything, but they if they can figure it out, I should be able to figure it out. But anyway, uh, let's see here. LD Jackson says, "I just got here, so you may already have covered this, but I think O'Toole was incredible in my favorite year." I agree. I agree. He was. Brian says, "What did you think of The Wire and HBO's Rome?" Boy, I wanted to love HBO's Rome. I really did, but it is largely terrible. Just wayward. Just a wayward show. The Wire, not so much. The Wire was brilliant. Hamilton Thompson has got to ask what happens in April. In April, bookish. I think the Bryants skipped that month because nothing was as catchy as Horror Mayhem. Well, I'm sure there are a bunch of things happening in April. I will be reading a graphic novel, for instance, with Matthew of Mabry Book Club and Michael K. Vaughan. Let's see here. His hair was nice in Troy. Brad Pitt, you mean? I assume. It's Puka says, "Hi, Steve. Hope you are doing well." Yeah, very funny. Very funny. Ranch Elder says, "Did you see Westworld? Brilliant performance by Anthony Hopkins." I saw Westworld, and I was clearly meant to think it was a brilliant performance by Anthony Hopkins. But Anthony Hopkins thoughtfully reading something on the 10th take, I need more than that to really love a show, and that was literally all that Westworld had to offer me. So I didn't end up liking it. Jack O'Hara says, "What about the Richard Harris Camelot?" Okay, all right, okay, fine. The Richard Harris Camelot. I automatically thought of that not as a version of Arthurian legend, but as a version of the Once and Future King. But you're right, it counts and it works just fine. So we'll do that. Revenant Reeds just stopping in to say hi. Wonderful, good to have you. Saw your video earlier today about moving house and instituting a Steve guest wing. Very nice. uh, let's see here. Hiba Ibrahim said, should reading be for enjoyment or improvement? What you enjoy improves you. So usually, if you're doing enjoyment right, what you're enjoying improves you. If it's not dangerous, if it's not harmful to you, then it will improve you. But there's no either or. It depends on what you feel like. That's all. Maybury Book Club. What's wrong with a never-ending live stream? Plenty if it's me. It's a plenty if it's me. When you mentioned a never-ending Steve live stream, Dev is having flashbacks to our information desk because that's what it was. That's what our information desk was. It was a never-ending Steve live stream. Bottle in Book says favorite HBO series in recent years was The Young Pope. Oh, again, I really wanted to love it, but look what Jude Law does in that show. Just look what he's doing. It's so painful. I mean, the other people, sure, the fun of casting John Malkovich as a what he's doing in that show is just so painful to watch. All that weird straining and facial stuff, just obviously wanting to be Ian McShane from Deadwood, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work if you're trying to do that. It doesn't even work for Ian McShane if he's trying to do that. Thunder Turtle says, "Do you happen to know any literature on the Slavs, Slavic culture, and the pre-Great Move?" Oh God, not off the top of my head, no. Uh, Jude Law says, "Do you like the Adrian Mole series?" I've always wanted to ask. Yes, it's good. Jack O'Hara says, "No, Eric Bana's curly mullet thing was dreamy." All right, well, Eric Bana with the sound off in Troy, sure. Sure, absolutely. Even with the sound on, he's pretty good in the movie. Just not in general. Just not in general. That's all. And let's not talk about Star Trek. Let's see here. Leo Percara says, "Hey, Steve, do you like being there with Peter Sellers?" Yes. Micah Cummins says, "Hello, Steve. Glad you're streaming again." Thank you. I'm a little surprised that the stream is all about movies and TV, but it's fine by me. It's a passion of mine as well as reading. Snark Hunter says, "When Richard Harris died, TV obituaries forgot to mention that Dumbledore was once in Camelot." I noticed that too. Broke my heart. Absolutely broke my heart. Uh, Dr. Bacon says, "I picked up a copy of Robert Alter's Five Books of Moses per your recommendation. Truly wonderful." Boy, I love hearing that my recommendations work. I love hearing that. Absolutely love it. Uh, Fadista says, "Steve, what do you think of Genius with Jude Law? What is the bit of character of Thomas Wolfe?" Yeah, yeah, I do. I, I, Jude Law has talent. He has genuine talent, but you have to know exactly how to use it. If you misread it, he's not going to tell you that you're misreading it. And uh, oh, okay. Hamilton Thompson mentions the Longmire show as a contemporary riff on the cowboy. I totally agree. Oh my God, the Longmire TV show is, if anything, better than the series of books. Incredible. Find the streaming service that you subscribe to that has it, and start with the very first episode. Just amazing. Just an amazing show. Uh, CFAX says, "Just started reading the fictionalized book on Mussolini and want to thank you for the recommendation. Such beautiful and visceral prose." Yes, I want so much to have people to talk about that book with. I want so much to talk about it with, especially my fellow critics, but largely anybody. Yes, the prose is beautiful and visceral thanks to the translator. What an incredible job the translator does. And the prose is every bit that involving and beautiful, even though it's not in any way trying to defend Mussolini. It's not trying to superheroize him. I just, I'm I'm well along my way in the second volume, and the second volume is, if anything, more brutal to him and still beautiful. I hope that it gets the accolades it deserves in April. Uh, let's see here. Jack O'Hara says, "Similar now, perhaps even more sad, how Heath Ledger is known as the Joker and not Ennis Delmore." Yes, what a show, what a performance in Brokeback Mountain. What a performance. But yeah, he'll forever be economous with the joke, synonymous with the Joker. Uh, 99 Goosebumps asked me a "Have you read?" question. We're going to leave that aside. Nick Piccarilli says, "I just finished The Power of the Dog by Don Winslow this morning." Another great recommendation. Mayberry Book Club is back. "Does your copy of Robert Alter's Bible have a typo with the New York Times hyperlink?" That must be directed to somebody else, right? I don't. I'm too old to know what a hyperlink is. Uh, Sakari Happanen says, "What do you think of The Sopranos?" At the heart of The Sopranos is a great acting performance. I don't deny that. But what is The Sopranos about? It's about how cool it is to be able to shoot somebody with no repercussions. The only repercussions that will ever come is if you do something wrong, in which case the other people in your criminal organization, who also don't have any repercussions when they beat or rob or kill someone who just happens to bother them. You drove up on my lawn, bang. You said the wrong thing to a kid that I barely know, bang. Without ever the police coming to your door, tracing the forensics, putting you in jail for the rest of your miserable life. The only time you're ever going to get shot on The Sopranos is by those people if you do something that bothers them, but not if you do something wrong. It just the ethos behind the show really, really bothered me. And it was true. It's true for every member of Tony's operation. If anything bad, if anything bugs them, they just kill the person who's doing it or threaten to kill the person who's doing it. I keep thinking back to that moment in The Sopranos when Tony Soprano notices just off the top of his head for no reason at all, in the middle of a conversation with someone else, that a guy on the other side of the restaurant is wearing his baseball hat indoors, gets up, walks over, and tells the guy to take the hat off and stares at him. And it's clear the stare is meant to say, if you don't do this, I'll kill you. And I don't know about you, but in that scene, I'm the guy with the hat on. I would never wear a hat indoors in a restaurant, but I'm the guy with the hat on. Who are you to tell me what to do? I, Especially when the unspoken addendum to that moment was, if you don't do it, I'll either kill you now myself or I'll have you killed, again with no repercussions. That drives me nuts. And that's all through. But anyway, Fizzle Beef says, "Hi, Steve. What are your thoughts on The Tunnel by Gas?" It's a little bit much, isn't it? Just a little bit much. It's largely written, well, it wasn't written this way, but it's largely used for Dude Bros to have something to talk about. Uh, uh, Lydia Joy says, "Do you like the Americans TV series? I love that spy stuff." I haven't watched it. Bottle Book says finally someone who feels the same way about The Sopranos. I don't think it's a way that you can avoid. How can you avoid it? It the clear implication in that infamous, final scene in The Sopranos is that Tony will not be arrested. That's not what's coming at him through the darkness of the diner. It's that he's going to be whacked. But the law, no, no. But anyway, Hamilton Thompson says, "Is this successful stream another step towards the 40-person BookTube group read chat? Which book to read through?" Well, I would love to organize such a thing, but I can't do it on my own. Most people have a great deal more uh, impediments to doing that sort of thing than I do. So I can be all on board, rah rah rah, cheering the thing on, but everybody else has jobs to go to and loved ones who aren't little canines perfectly willing to hog up camera time and whatnot. It's harder to organize with that sort of thing. Dr. Bacon says, "Do you think Sterling's The Change series is adaptable? I'd love to see a show." It's easily adaptable, right? After the first episode, you don't need a special effects budget, right? That's the only one. In the first episode, you need to blow the wad of your special effects budget on planes falling out of the sky, but that's it. Other than that, it's all medieval drama. It's medieval costume drama. It's adaptable, certainly. I would love to see it if it were done well, but uh, the you know what would happen to it, right? You know what would happen to it. It would be warped according to current Twitter politics, uh, which would ruin everything. Which would ruin. But you see, oh no, but okay, but I'm not. I can't scroll up on the comments. But someone is comparing, I think, The Sopranos to The Godfather, and with The Godfather, there's no question involved about the seediness of what's going on. Even the Corleones who don't want to get into the drug traffic trade, you know perfectly well what a petty, seedy world they live in. They aren't good guys, and that is drastically different, I think, from what you're getting out of in The Sopranos. You are clearly you're supposed to want to be in Tony's crew. You are clearly supposed to want to be above the law the way they are. The Sopranos are in Godfather. That's absolutely not the case. You want out of that world. You don't want to be part of it at all. I don't think you do. Uh, let's see here. NP Hunt says, "So are we all pulling for the Steve biopic to star Timothy Chalamet, directed by Nolan with a screenplay by Cormac McCarthy?" Well, that would be my luck, wouldn't it? But I don't know what all this talk of a Steve biopic is all about. Right now, there's nothing to film. And the parts of my life where I did things that I doubt anybody would believe. It wouldn't work as a biopic. Uh, let's see here. LD Jackson says, "I'm such a book nerd that if I ever see books behind anyone in a photo, movie, or TV show, I'm only interested in what books are on the shelves, even in your videos." I was just about to agree with you until you admitted to that heresy. Joe Law 13 says, "Did you party on the streets when the Red Sox won in 2004? No, I was appropriately somber. The Red Sox broke their curse in 2004 in the only way that curses are ever broken. That is by spilling the blood of an innocent virgin. If you Google Victoria Snellgrove, the name Victoria Snellgrove, you will see what I mean." And so when the Red Sox finally won in 2004, I poured out a glass in memory of Victoria Snellgrove, the virgin we had to sacrifice to break our curse. 99 Goosebumps says, "Of the great epics, Divine Comedy, Paradise Lost, and Pilgrim's Project, which do you find yourself rereading most often?" Divine Comedy, absolutely. Rena's Reading says, "That movie would be just 2 hours of burning cigarette and fade to black." That's Timothy Chalamet, I assume. Uh, let's see here. Another a person saying The Walking Drum has hooked them in the first chapter. Fantastic. I love hearing that my recommendations have landed. That's fantastic. Uh, let's see here. Jack O'Hara says, "I could see Eddie Redmayne rolling around in tall grass with a pack of beagles for 3 hours straight. He can't roll around in tall grass for even 20 minutes before he is seized with a massive coughing fit. Can't do anything really active. He can sit in cafes, but that's about it." Uh, let's see here. Sean D says, "In the Godfather book, was the christening intercut with hits, or was that Coppola?" Not sure I know what you mean. Hamilton Thompson says, "Robert Wise directed the original Star Trek film. He worked across genres, West Side Story, The Haunting, many others." Uh, uh, Thunder Turtle wants to know if I have watched the Black Sails TV show. I have not. But I am watching, nice, smooth segue, The Clock. And we started this at 6:45, and it's now 8. So this has worked. This has absolutely worked. We got some great conversation in I got to make my peremptory throat clearing. You can all go back and listen to about how I wasn't bragging. I'm trusting that a lot of you, I recognize a lot of your names. A lot of you we've been talking back and forth every day for a long time. I trust that you know when I'm bragging. It's like my Deb earlier in the chat said, when he's actually bragging, he's insufferable. You'll know when I mention that I read a freakish amount. It's not that I'm bragging at all. But I got to clear my name in that regard with the one email that I got that's bugged me, and I didn't touch the chat, so it wasn't booted out, which means all I have to do is hit end stream, and this whole thing works. Then suddenly we're back in business for live streams. Uh, but I should do that, right? I should absolutely do that. Peter Elliott says, "Hey Steve, do you have a favorite Japanese author?" Yes, I do. The author of The Tale of Genji is my favorite Japanese author. Uh, uh, no, LD Jackson, no apologies. You must amend your behavior. Uh, Eyes on the prize, and the prize is not the demon. Who's right next to me as we speak, as usual. Uh, yes, the live stream did work. Got a nice healthy number. That's a lot of fun. We had a lot of input here. That's wonderful. Oh, the book eclectic has shown up just as we're wrapping things up. Perfect timing. uh, I can't help but wonder who in Hollywood isn't tobacco. Well, keep in mind, most of the people in Hollywood were theater kids, and most theater kids are chain smokers by the time they get to 15, whether they tell their parents that or not. But in addition to that, it's not hard. All you have to do is look at their faces, listen to their voices. If a reedy little twerp uh, comes on stage, a tiny little thing, opens their mouth, and you hear James Earl Jones, well, there's only one way to do that. There's only one way to get your vocal cords to do that. Uh, but anyway, anyway, I'm now going to try the final experiment here by ending the stream. I wanted to come on, issue a peremptory self-defense about bragging, and then see if it would work. And it definitely did. So we will do this again. We will do this again whenever I'm feeling chatty. We will do this again and just see uh, uh, whether or not this works again. And it looks to me like whenever I do a live stream, uh, no matter the time, and also no matter what my initial throat clearing is, it looks to me like we get to around, if I'm reading the number correctly, there are 116 people here. And it looks to me like that's around what we do for a live stream. That's fine. I don't care about that number one way or another. But I was curious to know, and it looks like that's what it is. So we will do this again. Oh, Sakari Happening says your recommendation got me reading the Canterbury Tales. Oh my God, how great is that to hear? Oh my God. Uh, are you ever not feeling chatty? Sometimes. All right, no, no, I always am. Yes, but sometimes Frida is enough. Sometimes just chatting with Frida is enough, and other factors have to work into play too. Right? I have to be ahead of my work. I didn't think I would be earlier today. I didn't think I would be ahead of my work, but I have noticed if you give me a word count and a clear runway, I can get a lot done in very little time. So I have 4 hours. It's 8 now Boston time, so I have 4 hours until I shut everything off and read. 4 hours is a long time. I can get a lot of work done, a lot of writing done in that time. So I'm gonna end the stream here. I thank you all for coming, especially since I didn't think this would work again. I'm going to end the stream here and upload it. And I'm also going to upload the day's videos, which are a little bit late getting up now. I made them all earlier today, but then I forgot. So they're all ready. So you'll be getting 3 videos plus this live stream to rewatch at normal speed. Okay. None of this hyper speed, Steve. I don't want to sound like Minnie Mouse while you're listening to me. I don't know how many of you do that, but I want it nipped in the bud. Normal speed. And if your significant other, however significant they are, says, "Well, if you run all his videos at normal speed, isn't going to take up a lot of your time," you turn to them and you say, "He is my time. He is all." Okay. Anyway, I think I've caused enough trouble for tonight. So I will end the stream right now and hope that it works. I'll see you all next time. We'll catch a whole bunch of people next time. Uh, so no, no, it's not caffeinated Steve. Steve has never had caffeine. Just natural. It's just natural obnoxiousness. That's so I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I will be back. Thank you all so much for showing up. This was so much fun. This is as close as we're ever going to get to all of you being in this room, eating my wine and drinking, eating my food and drinking my wine. This is as close as we're ever going to get. So I'm incredibly happy for it. So I'm good. So live streams are back. That's not a black cloud on my mental horizon. They work. This worked just fine. So good, excellent. So that is the last vestige of that has to happen. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I wish you all a good night. I will see you all in the funny papers, as they say in my videos, and I'll be back. I will spring another live stream on you as soon as I have another chatty period. Thank you, BookTube.